A gun that cannot move is not a weapon. It is an obstacle. That single truth shaped Italian military thinking across both world wars more completely than almost any other lesson, and it shaped it for a reason that had nothing to do with tactics and everything to do with geography. Italy fights in mountains, it fights in desert, it fights across terrain that breaks conventional vehicles, snaps axles, swallows wheels, and turns supply lines into endurance tests. The question Italian engineers spent 3 decades trying to answer was not how to build a more powerful gun. It was how to get the gun there in the first place. The machines they built to answer that question are almost entirely absent from the histories written about the Italian military in the Second World War. They shouldn't be. The lesson Italy took from the First World War was immediate and specific. Fighting against Austro-Hungarian forces across the Alps, the Italian army watched its artillery get left behind repeatedly, not because the guns weren't powerful enough, but because the terrain made moving them an almost impossible problem. Horses struggled on mountain paths. Conventional trucks failed on gradients and broken ground. A battery of guns, sitting at the wrong altitude, unable to be repositioned before the tactical situation changed, was a battery that contributed nothing. By the time the war ended, Italian planners had arrived at a conclusion that would drive vehicle development for the next 20 years. If the gun couldn't move with the army couldn't fight effectively, and the solution had to work not on roads but across terrain where roads didn't exist. The first serious answer came from an unlikely source. Ugo Pavesi was an agricultural engineer, not a military designer, and the tractor he developed beginning in 1913 was originally intended to help farmers plough wet fields in weather that would bog down conventional machines. The Pavesi P4's design was unlike anything that existed. 4 large wheels of identical size, all capable of driving and steering simultaneously, mounted on an articulated chassis that could flex at the center, keeping all 4 wheels in contact with the ground, even across deeply uneven terrain. It could climb a 75-degree slope. It could cross ground that stopped everything else. The military version caught attention at exactly the right moment, demonstrated in 1923 before observers that included Mussolini, then Prime Minister, who was reportedly impressed enough to consider immediate adoption. The vehicle was too expensive for Italian army budgets at the time, but Spain ordered 60 of them, and Fiat eventually secured a manufacturing license. From 1928, Italy was building Pavesi tractors for its own artillery, and the machines served across Ethiopia, Spain, and North Africa, hauling guns across terrain that conventional transport couldn't reach. The Spanish Civil War, where Italian forces deployed with the Corps of volunteer troops supporting the nationalists, provided something more valuable than a victory. It provided an honest engineering evaluation under operational conditions. The Spanish Civil War, where Italian forces deployed with the Corps of volunteer troops supporting the nationalists, provided something more valuable than a victory. It provided an honest engineering evaluation under operational conditions. The Pavesi's suspension, excellent in theory, proved inadequate on the rough roads and broken terrain of the Spanish interior. The machine was large and complex for what it delivered. Italian planners left Spain knowing the next generation had to do better, and the specification they wrote in 1935 reflected exactly what they had learned. They wanted 4-wheel drive. They wanted all 4 wheels to steer, giving the tightest possible turning radius in confined mountain terrain. They wanted a crew of 6 because the gun crew had to travel with the tractor. They wanted the ability to tow 75mm and 100mm artillery pieces at 40 km per hour across rough ground. And they wanted it all in a machine substantially lighter and simpler than the Pavesi. The answer was the TL-37, developed by Fiat S.p.A. and accepted into service in 1937. It weighed less than the Pavesi, sat lower to the ground and turned in a radius of 5 meters, tight enough to maneuver on the narrow tracks that served as roads in the terrain Italy expected to fight across. A 52-horsepower engine delivered its power at low revolutions, the mechanical characteristic that matters most in a prime mover, because torque at low speed is what pulls a gun up a muddy slope when raw power isn't enough. The TL-37 entered Libya for desert testing in 1938, towing 75mm guns, and performed. While the TL-37 handled the lighter guns, Italy still needed something capable of moving its heaviest artillery. The 149mm field guns, the 90mm anti-aircraft pieces, the weapons that required a machine of a completely different weight class. The Breda TP32 had filled part of this role through the late 1930s, a heavy four-wheel machine of over 8 tons, capable of towing pieces that would have destroyed a lighter vehicle's drivetrain. It served in Ethiopia, Spain, and throughout the Second World War as one of the few Italian tractors with genuine heavy lift capacity. But the gap it left, the need for a medium tractor more capable than the TL37, but more manageable than the Breda, pointed toward the last and arguably most significant vehicle in this development line. The SPA-TM40 entered service in 1942, after a development period that had begun in 1938, and it represented the fullest expression of everything Italian engineers had learned across 2 decades of designing prime movers for difficult terrain, a 6-cylinder diesel producing 105 horsepower through 4 forward gears and all-wheel steering. A winch rated for recovery and field repair work, seating for the driver plus 7 gun crew, with ammunition storage built into the rear body. Capable of towing the 149mm artillery pieces and 90mm anti-aircraft guns that were becoming central to Italian defensive doctrine as the war turned against them. The TM40 is considered by many analysts of Italian military equipment to be one of the better artillery tractors produced by any combatant nation during the Second World War. What made the TM40's legacy extend beyond its own service life was the chassis beneath it. Italian engineers recognized that a platform capable of carrying that drivetrain, that suspension, and that load capacity was capable of carrying other things as well. The TM40 chassis became the foundation for the AB-41 armoured car, one of Italy's most effective wheeled combat vehicles. The same chassis family gave rise to the Camionetta AS-42, the desert raiding vehicle purpose-built to counter the LRDG, which carried its 2,000-kilometre range and flexible armament on mechanical foundations first proven in an artillery tractor. A decision made about how to move a gun turned into the platform that shaped Italian armoured vehicle design for the remaining years of the war. None of these machines appear in the photographs that define the Italian military experience in the Second World War. They appear in the background of those photographs, if they appear at all, behind the guns they were pulling, behind the positions they had just helped prepare, behind the battles they had made possible by arriving. The Italian army's problems in the Second World War were real and well documented. Equipment shortages, industrial constraints, tanks that were already obsolete when the war began, strategic decisions made by political leadership rather than military judgment. But the prime movers that kept Italy's artillery mobile across Spain, Ethiopia, North Africa, the Balkans and Russia were not part of those problems. They were among the solutions. Italy understood earlier than most, and more completely than it usually gets credit for, that firepower means nothing without the machines to carry it where it needs to go.